Hello, everybody. I am so glad you are joining me today. We are talking to Jim Goettsche. Now, we already talked to him, and he shared what is probably one of the most incredible near death experiences that some of you have heard before. Really amazing. And that was in part one, and I'll have a link to that in the description. Here are just a couple of the things that we talked about.
Then this tapestry popped out in front of me. The height of it was how many people were on Earth at any given time. So you could see that population go up and down and vary. And I saw that the present we're like at about as one of the maximas. It did seem to get a little higher, but then the population falls to the floor.
Of course, there is so much more to talk about, and we're going to dig in deeper. So here's what's ahead in part two.
It was a giant tapestry, and then you could pan and zoom into it. And when you zoomed into it, you actually see people living their lives. It's a living record. All of it is as life was happening in those times and in the future, which is another thing that's just mind-boggling, really, because how can it all exist simultaneously? We're down here looking for love, and that love was what I was made of. It's like I didn't have to look. I didn't have to. And it wasn't because of who I was or who I could be or who I wasn't. It just was. And yeah, you couldn't do anything to change it.
This is Beyond with Heather Tesch, where we examine near-death experiences and life itself, hopefully making this life a little better. Well, how do you explain the unexplainable? It's interesting because so many people talk about timelessness during their near-death experience, but I thought it was really interesting that you actually saw the people just frozen in time. Even one of the children was just up in the air, frozen.
Yeah. It was when I later in life saw movies where they had scenes like that. It was like, there it is. That's exactly what it was like. This is exactly it. It's so weird. It's so surreal to think that time is something we can be outside of. It's just, there's a lot to wrap your mind around.
There's so much to wrap our minds around with your story. The tapestry was so incredible that you described. How was there so much detail in a tapestry? Is there a way that you can help us understand that?
It's like zooming in with a microscope or something. So in its entirety, it was a giant tapestry. And then you could pan and zoom into it. And when you zoomed into it, you actually see people living their lives. It's a living record. All of it is as life was happening in those times and in the future, which is another thing that's just mind-boggling, really, because how can it all exist simultaneously when it by the numbers, it had an obvious sequence to it, right? It was coherent in that way, but it was all happening when you viewed it. It was happening like it happened. It's like a living record.
It really is fascinating, just everything you saw with that tapestry. There were so many things I want to ask you about, but you saw these, I don't know if they're beings of light or these points of light, and one of them was a lifetime that you really examined through and through. How were these connected to you, do you think? Were they past lives?
I wonder if that could be the case. If they are, they're very sparse. So
And what do you mean by they're very sparse?
they were sprinkled all throughout the tapestry. That was a long time ago. That life that I examined in detail was it's in this flush. of humanity, but there was lifetimes and other flushes of humanity. If that's what those were, they were sprinkled all throughout, and they're usually in the earlier parts, not like in the maxima like we're in now.
And by flush, do you mean in the periods where there was a population surge and then
Yeah,
back down?
yeah, because there's an overall surge at it. It's kind of almost like a flat line early on, and then it starts to, and it kind of just builds on itself. It's almost like a geometric progression, but not quite.
And it's interesting too that you saw what looked like some spiritual beings, I think, um, that were observing the earth.
Yeah, yeah, that was very clear. It was very clear that they came and surveyed the planet for a while. They like just watched it, observed it for a while, and then it looked like they picked a species. And I don't know if archaeology is correct. Maybe we altered our species. We're definitely not from here, and we are the aliens that we're looking for. We are interdimensional beings, which is that was a whole other aspect of it. This is hard to wrap your mind around. That was 45 years ago that I had the experience, so it's taken me a while to assimilate it and be able to talk about it this way. Really,
I mean, I can't imagine all the things you saw, and you're only 11 years old and you're trying to understand everything. You also, in addition to the past, you saw the future. And it was interesting that you said our population is going to go up a little bit more and then it's going to come down and it's going to flatline at a much lower population and it stays there.
yeah.
Did you get a sense of how far out in the future that could be?
I had hoped I wasn't going to live to see it. It's not too far. It could be another lifetime or something, but it. And unfortunately, the whole thing was all relative to itself. So there wasn't like timelines. It wasn't years. I don't know. I wish there's so many things I wish I would have looked at about it, but the context of it was it was a furtherance to my question of why would we be in these bodies when we exist in such a blissful state. And it was just a context, I think, is to put it in context.
It's interesting too, because much of how you described the future and communicating telepathically, growing our food through prayer, just some of the other descriptions, it reminds me a lot of another guest, Vinnie Tolman. And I always find it fascinating when, I'll hear a couple of them that really match in terms of what they saw for the future. The one thing that was different though with you is you said everything was sort of khaki, and I almost got the impression that you thought it was a little bit more bland than the life we're living now.
There's a lot less variety of life experience, that's for sure. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because everyone that was represented in the Akashic had their own unique hue, and the hues were by affinities and by just even geographical. If you're born into a certain part of the world, you have a certain kind of an experience, and you have a certain kind of culture and whatnot. So they all had different hues to them, which is really interesting now that when I think about it, that they talk about chakras having different hues and different colors, and us being possibly a combination of our chakras or whatever, and that being represented there.
But not so much in the future.
No, not in the future. Everyone's the same resonance. As I said, it's like a hive mind, like a hive being. but they were aware of their spiritual nature, kind of like the beginning. But even in the beginning, it was a different color. It was almost like a blue, iridescent blue.
That was really fascinating too, when you saw some of the earlier humans and you were saying that they lived much longer lives and they also knew where they were from.
Yeah,
But somewhere along the line, we lost that.
yeah,
And did you get any kind of a greater explanation as to why? I know you mentioned sort of materialism.
yeah. I didn't ask. I just noticed though that they started interacting more and actually like creating things of the physical world, and it was actually fairly quick. But in what time span, I don't know what quick means in the Akashic, because uh, how long ago were we this populous, right? If this is the fourth time, like it portrayed, um, there's some deep history we don't know about.
You also, during your near death experience, realized that you were made of love. What is it like to go from being an atheist and then suddenly making that discovery?
I attribute it to the being that was behind me. It was actually, it was like being next to a boiler or something. It was just radiating through me, and so that's why I was so confused. Like, if I exist like this, why would I be in a body? Shoot, I mean, this is nice, you know. We're we're down here looking for love, and love was what I was made of. It's like I didn't have to look, I didn't have to, and it wasn't because of who I was or who I could be or who I wasn't. It just was, and yeah, you couldn't do anything to change it, and that was just such a departure from the life we live in our bodies here. And it's just, that's why I had that question, because I felt like I knew everything, and I attribute that to that being, because I didn't feel that way until that whatever showed up. You know, even when I ran into the other beings out in space, I didn't feel that like love was what I was made of. I was just, and I was just accepting what was happening because it was happening. You know, like a child will, I guess.
Of course, now the question is, who was that being?
Yeah, that is the question. It really is. I just know that we're deeply loved, and that there's profoundly knowledgeable beings that care about us deeply. That's all I can say for sure about that.
Do you think that was Source or the Creator?
I'm not sure. It I don't know, sometimes it makes me wonder about our idea of source and creator, because we're given to understand it as omnipotent and omnipresent, but I if that's true, he was doing something else, or she was doing something else at the time, because it wasn't there immediately, right? And then not till after I ran into those other beings, and even I had time to check out that view, and then came back to over my body before it dawned on me that those feelings, and then looking at the Akashic, that that's when I realized it was behind me to my left is where it was coming from.
Did it seem like a protector?
I felt safe, absolutely. I felt safe. No, because the absolute sense of serenity is like nothing could be wrong in the whole universe. Nothing could be anywhere. Could be the matter. It was so serene. It's just, everything's perfect. perfect like it is.
And you've had so many years to try to figure this all out. So do you carry that with you now? Do you feel like everything is okay? Everything is as it should be?
I don't always feel like everything's like it should be, but I know it works out in the end. I mean, even when it doesn't work out, because I'm not of this world. I'm in it. It's pretty surreal a lot of times still, just to be here, to know that I'm basically an alien in an Earth suit. You know,
So where are you at now? You were an atheist when this happened. What is your faith today?
I'm kind of a born again heathen.
What does that mean?
Well, in the sense that my understanding of definition of the term is people that were in England uh, when they weren't accepting of the local religion or tribe's religion, they were banished to the bog or the heath, and so that they were heathens. They weren't part of the mainstream. And religions, I think I see a truth, lots of profound truths in them, but they seem to be somewhat commercial and at the same time. So I don't ascribe to any particular religion.
But clearly you think there's more than just this life.
Oh yeah, it's based on a true story. The religions are based on a true story. It's just I think people do what people do, and I think a lot of people try to do their best with it, but
You mentioned the Akashic records and somehow the tapestry represented the Akashic records, or can you explain that so I can
yeah.
understand that a little better?
Well, somebody I was recounting it, just saying I saw this tapestry and it was made up of everyone that ever lived, and they said that's the Akashic record, is what that's called. So that's how I come to call it that. I know other people have different experiences of it. Some people see scrolls or they go to a library, but I kind of saw it in its totality instead of more specific.
When you saw the beings that were, I guess, choosing Earth as a place for humans to inhabit, you were describing them as spiritual beings, but could they also be what somebody considers an alien race or beings of a different dimension?
That's what I wonder too. I have wondered that. I mean, that's why I say we are the aliens we're looking for, because we're truly not from here. It's not just a Bible verse. We're truly not from here, and it appears that our awareness will persist forever, which is kind of daunting to me to think that forever is a long time. I mean, it is. And when you see the Akashic record, and you see how many people have lived and died on Earth, and that's just one record on one planet, and we persist. I, I don't have any information that would suggest otherwise, that we don't keep persisting forever. And then that has to make me wonder, this seemed like a good idea to come here. What's it like where we come from, that this seems like a good idea?
And as you were told, or as you got the sense that we are here to learn.
Yeah, we are. And when I got, what the Native Americans call your original instructions, when I remembered why I chose to be here, I just had to be here in the worst way. I was like, no, I can't not do it. I have to go. I have to go back. Which I regret doing that a lot of times, because I could have had a more interactive experience. I could have asked more questions. I mean, I asked a good question, but that begets so many other questions that It
And you just mentioned Native American. So was this part of your near-death experience? And if so, what was that?
no, no, it's just a a phrase that I heard that made the most sense to me was the original instructions. People like to talk about soul contracts and things like that nature, but to me, that sounds almost corporate. It almost sounds legal, and it really didn't have that connotation to it to me. And that's just me bringing that connotation to the whole soul contract concept. But so that's why I use that phrase is original instructions.
Jim, a lot of people come back with gifts after their near-death experience. Did you have any changes, intuition, anything like that that you discovered after this?
Yes, I did. I did. Um, it actually verified uh, things that I suspected before, and definitely enhanced them. I say it like I suffered from all the clairs. Like I I could touch objects and know the ownership or its creation. You um, could see what was going to happen. Um, I still will dream future events on occasion, but yeah, I had experience with pretty much all the clairs, clairaudient and clairvoyant. Very rich dream life. Uh, uh, what do you call it? Lucid dreaming.
Do you still have these gifts?
I pretty much wrapped them up. I was pretty overwhelmed by it, and I so when I first came back, I basically communed with the other side um, on an all the time basis. So if I ever had a deep pressing question about life, I would get an instant response, and then if I didn't get the response, it just became more and more uh, rich content to where it would actually be experiential. I would experience the answer, it like through scenarios or whatever it took. Then when I went through puberty, that kind of went away, and then I had guides. I say guides plural because I was able to discern. And at one time, I had like a committee of five. It seemed that a lot of people just think of it as prayer, but and that's all it is. I think is a form of prayer that is immediately answered. Um, I just over time, over several years, I came to notice that sometimes there'd be a slight delay in the response, and in that delay, you could individuate different um, like theories that were being contemplated for an answer. It's there was like five unique, I don't know how you'd call it, presences, but they always answered in one voice. It always sounded the same voice. Um, but to me, it just it added a layer of complexity to life that really wasn't serving me, it, to my reckoning anyway. Um, because I was in a state of PTSD as well, and but when I made that decision, I was told that I could come back to it later in life. Just have to do it like everyone else does. It wouldn't be a byproduct of the NDE anymore. You know, I could close that connection, but I'd have to come back to it willfully through work.
And have you resolved your PTSD from this?
I did. I did. It took me. It was about 22 years of pretty. deep in PTSD from that. So it's taken me about another 23 years, 20 years or so to work my way out of it, really. There's not a lot of resources, unfortunately. I it didn't dawn on me till that it really is a form of PTSD from a profoundly positive experience, and that life is triggering every day because there's so much about physical life and the physical survival that is discordant with all that, with that love and serenity and nothing being the matter. It's like, and so it's like triggered, and you keep reliving it, and then I mean, I had to take responsibility. It was the the way I structured my life or didn't structure it wasn't helping that scenario, but part of that was self-soothing, and where that takes you isn't always joy.
Well, Jim, I'm glad you're over it. And I can't tell you how much I enjoyed meeting you at the IONS conference that we were both at. And we certainly there are surrounded by so many other people that,
Oh,
like
it's so
you,
wonderful.
yeah, you've had
So
these
wonderful.
experiences and you're all trying to get through them and understand them.
It took me a lot of years before I could even get to where I reached out to ions, even after I knew of it. So
Well, it's so different. It's so different than life here on earth. These stories that you and others come back to share, they are incredible. And I know they're great teachers for all of us, just to make this world a better place. And you all come back with the same message about
absolutely,
being here to learn about love and giving love and receiving love. And I think that's such a great message.
it absolutely is, and we're vastly more influential than we're ever given to know, um, in the media, and uh, we because it was very clear in the Akashic record how interwoven and how interactive energetically and how much we affect each other. Or it just in our daily contact, it doesn't have to be grandiose acts. It just in our own state of awareness, just our own continence is influential. I mean, I'm sure anyone's been in a room or a setting where someone with some bad energy comes in and it just kind of throws off the whole room. It works both ways, and it works that way all the time. We're all constantly influencing each other, whether we're conscious of it or not, which is definitely a positive, I think.
And that probably is a good place to end, just, reminding people of how important our interactions are and that they
Absolutely.
are they are so much more powerful than what we often realize. Well, Jim, thank you so much. I know you haven't shared your story before on the internet like this, and
No,
so I so appreciate it. Your story is so incredible and it's so detailed, and I enjoyed it far more than just listening to all of it and hearing what you went through.
cool. Yeah, thanks.
All right.
Thanks for
Thank you
having me.
so much. You are so welcome, Jim. All right. Take care.
You too. Bye.
All right. Bye bye. By the way, a shout out to David Williamson, one of my past guests, because he's the one that came up to me at the IONS conference and said, "You have to listen to this guy's story." And that's how I met James. That's how I heard about these fascinating details, this tapestry, the future, the past, the beings, the stars, everything that he talked about. It really is up there when it comes to just incredible experiences. And I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I would love to hear your thoughts. So if you could put those in the comments, I really appreciate it. If you prefer just to say I made it, that is also great. Just the fact that you comment really makes a difference to this channel. And so I want to thank all of you that do that. The likes also make a difference, as well as subscribing. And if you can share it with a friend, that helps as well. By the way, if you'd like to see past episodes, all of my episodes are found on my playlist, and I always have a link to that in the description. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here today. I am so grateful for each and every one of you. Thanks for joining me on Beyond with Heather Tesch. Please add comments and questions you'd like future guests to answer. Also, if you liked what you heard, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. That'll help keep this podcast going. You can also go to Beyond with Heather Tesch to look for more episodes.